Well, hello, good morning. It's about 11:25 here in Pittsburgh. I am Brother DeRoy Cruz, your life applications officer. Hello, YouTubers. Today on this freestyle video, because I really don't care about all this nonsense, but I figure I would just put in my 2 cents. I was watching Polight, Mr. Brother Polight, and his argument. That's all they ever are, is arguments. His argument with the Jewish preacher. He was supposed to be, and I mean, he seems like he's a brother that grew up in the hood, and he decided to find his Jewish roots, like a lot of black people are trying to find themselves. Okay, I found myself. Anyway, and it ain't got nothing to do with Africa, and it ain't got nothing to do with hating on white folks. I done found myself. It's called Jesus. Anyway, uh, he looked like he tried to find himself, and he found his Jewish roots, and he decided to log on to the Jewish religion. This is my problem with that. First of all, before this is about Polight, but this Jewish brother, let me say this real quick. Anyone, whether you call yourself an Israelite, or whether you call yourself a Jew, or whether you call yourself a Christian, we have one thing in common. We're it. We're it. Now, maybe Muslims think that you have your religion and I got my religion and all these different religions. But anyone who's a Christian, and I believe this brother who was on this video with Polight, I'll have to look up the name of the video. I forget what it was called. Dominican. Something. Jew. Dominican Jews is what he was. And one thing I don't get is, we understand, if I talk to an Israelite, the Israelites are the only faith in God. They'll say that they're not religious, they are it. The Jews, they believe that they're the only ones, they're it. And I believe I'm it. Now, Judaism, that is why Christ came in the first place. To cut the head off of that. Okay? You think he came down here for them. No, he came down here to put them in their place. That's why when he got down here, after all the healing and after all the miracles and all that stuff, they nailed him to a cross. Okay? Because, the Romans didn't care. But when he went and he put the religious people in their place, they put him on a cross. Well, that's okay, because that's what he came to do. He came to put the Jewish people in their place and show them how ungodly their religion was. Thank God he did that. For me. Because, first of all, I can't be Judaic because I'm black. I'm not Jew. I'm not a Jew. Now, I know a lot of black people will tell me I'm a Jew. I'm not a Jew. I'm black. Neither was I born and raised in the nation of Israel. Okay? Neither did my ancestors put in gas chambers during the time of Hitler. My ancestors, I'm assuming, were slaves, black slaves. That does not make me a Jew. Okay? But even though the Jews might have been brown skinned at one time, that does not make me a Jew. Because if you were a Jew, see, this is where Polight and everybody gets twisted. Whatever you are is what you know you are, not what you choose to be. Now I can choose to be a Christian because why? We are separated from God. We have to reconcile ourselves to God. So that's fine. But if you are a Jew, or if you are an African, or you are a Russian, and see, white people don't have a problem with this. Only black folks. Only black folks have a problem with this. I'm getting off. See, this is why I like to write stuff down. I had to write my notes because I'll get off. But only black folks have this issue where they have to fight over who they are. White folks don't have this problem. I know I got white friends that go back and forth to Europe because that's where they're from. They went to, Polight hates Europe. He went to saying all kinds of stuff about the Europeans. Okay? White folks don't have this problem. A white person can have family in Russia and go visit his family in Russia and not bring Russian culture back to the United States and feel that, I have to, I'm Russian. I'm Russian. You better approach me because I'm not white. I'm Russian. German people. I got friends that their original ancestry is from Germany. They don't care. They even know people in Germany. They don't care. Write them a letter or something. They don't care. I'm an American. They don't care. Only black folks. Oh, well, I'm not an African. I didn't go through slavery. I'm not a Jamaican. Okay, and then these knucklehead Hebrew Israelites. Oh, well, we accept African Americans, blacks. We accept Spanish people. We don't accept Asians and whites. You're in no position to accept or unaccept anybody. Only black folks. Other than me. I really don't care. I woke up as an American. My mama taught me English. Okay? And when the white folks came to visit me at the hospital, and when the white folks came over my house, I understood what language they were speaking. We was all speaking English. Now, back in the day, there were certain people in my family that had a little lingo. Had a little lingo or had a little dialogue going on with that English, and the white man said, "What did you say?" "I'm sorry, sir. What oh, okay. It's sandwich." "What did you say, sandwich?" "Okay. I'm sorry. I thought you said sandwich, but I just wanted to make sure that's what you said." But only black folks got this issue of trying to find themselves. Now, let me tell you something. As far as religion, there are so many different things that people believe. Even in the church. I go to a church where I'm assuming we all believe the same thing. And there's people that come in there and they're like, let me take this out of here. I do this all the time. I didn't know this was in here. Let me put this out of here. Before my phone overheats or something. Anyway, I meet these people who they bring it into your local church. They come in here with these weird ideas. And you're like, is that in Scripture? But, you don't want to argue with them. Let me tell you something. There's no law that says we have to argue. Matter of fact, the Bible, and I'm saying this to the Christian apologists out there who think that they need to argue with people in order to win them to Christ. No, you don't. The Bible says no man comes unto Christ lest God draws him. If God doesn't do it, it doesn't get done. I'm not saying you don't have to do anything. But God will put you in a position to where you can share your faith with people. You don't have to argue with people. When we get into an argument, that means that I'm casting my pearls before swine because you're not willing to listen. That's why on this whole thing I did on atheism, I didn't ask questions. And I didn't even talk about their questions that they asked me. I talked about their lifestyle of sin. How they can say whatever they want to say. The evidence is physical. The evidence against them is physical evidence. Now, you claim that the evidence against Christ does not exist. Well, if the evidence of Christ does not exist, then your evidence against Christ does not exist either. But we don't have to argue. There's a way to preach the gospel, my Jewish brother. And see, to me, there is no Jews on a religious level. There's Jewish Christians. Okay, there's black Christians, there's white Christians, there's Asian Christians. But if you're not a Christian, let me tell you something polite. Let me tell you about my culture. Okay? You said in the video, there's no perspective. There's no up or down. Okay, my up might be your down. You're right. My up is your down. Because where I come from, you ain't nothing but just another brother out on the street, okay, downplaying and degrading your people. Okay? And you is about as pro-black and pro-ghetto as they come. Okay, God bless you. Bravo for your success. Your success in what? Lying to your people because you really don't know what you're talking about. And what is it with New York? You know, when, my Uncle Glenn and my Aunt Rose invited me to New York back in the 80s. We went to Brooklyn. We went to Queens. We even went to Queens. Lord help us. We went to Brooklyn. We went to Queens. We went to New York City and Manhattan. We rode through the Bronx. We never went to Harlem. For some reason, my Uncle Glenn did not want to go through Harlem. Now, all these brothers with these weird names, like Mr. Polight, not very polite, not very bright, okay, and Mr. Saka, whatever, Amos, and Cyanetter, another knucklehead, okay, all right, they all come out of Harlem. And I watch their videos, their nonsense. Hate and unforgiveness is never a statue of morality or a statue that needs to be taught. Let me say that again. Hate and unforgiveness is never a statue or a moral code to teach your children. And I'm watching Polight flipping out on this Jewish brother while his children are in the background. And he talking about the white man, the white man, the white man, the white man. It's all about the white man. The only time the word white man comes out of my mouth is when I'm doing these videos. Don't come out of my mouth when I'm shaking hands and hugging my white brother. It don't come out of my mouth at work where white man signs my paycheck. It doesn't come out of my mouth at the rent-a-car place where white man's going to let me rent a car. It only comes out of my mouth when I got to deal with racist black folks who don't know how to let it go, and you want to teach this nonsense to your children. What white people did to you way back when you wasn't here. Oh my God, I'm getting a headache. You wasn't even here, okay? Neither was your grandmama. Some of y'all so young. Neither was your grandmama here. You think you qualified to make YouTube videos? Your grandmama wasn't here. Pass down. This is what's wrong with the black community. It's not white people. This is my opinion. It's not white people that did it to you. It's the way you handled it when you were free, when you had the right to vote, when you had the right to cross, city lines, when you had the right to use the same bathroom that the white man was using and all that kind of stuff. When you had the same rights, how you handled it from there on out, that's your fault. That's not the white man's fault. That's your fault. There shouldn't have been no cops arresting black folks legally once we got our freedom. There shouldn't have been no such thing as black gangs getting arrested because a black person called the cops on a black gang and the white man had to come and arrest some black folks. Are you getting this picture? Oh my God. We don't have to argue. It's all in front of us. All you got to do is stop letting evil control you, Polight. But what is it with New York? I went there and, I never got to know anything about Harlem. My Uncle Glenn did not like Harlem. I don't think. He stayed away from Harlem. I think at that time he told me there was nothing out there but slums. Well, I went to the Bronx and there are certain parts of Brooklyn that were slums, but I guess Harlem was really a slum back in the day. So I guess you're going to tell me that black folks are the ones that put Harlem back together with all your standing on corners and running your mouths and arguing with each other, and meanwhile all the white folks are working. And I see black folks just standing on corners arguing with each other. That's what I see every time I see a Hebrew Israelite video or a Polight video or a Saka or a Sinetter video. You know what? These white folks don't even have to let you stand on these corners and argue. They can just call the police and say, hey, we want them off the corner. Then what you going to do? Because that's what I would do. If I was the black mayor of Harlem, okay, you would have to go, I believe it's Beverly Hills, where Polight lives. You would have to go to Beverly Hills to do your videos. Because I don't believe in this stuff where black folks are allowed to stand on the street while white folks are walking by. And you sit there and talk about white folks like they're cancer. When meanwhile, every store behind you is owned by a white person. You're going to go in there. You need to go to them to eat. You need to go to them for hardware. You need to go to them to buy a car. You need to go to them for clothes. You need to go to them to find milk and Pampers for your baby. You need to go to them for hair products. To do that stupid looking weave. Either them or the Asians. And you hating. It ain't their fault that they know how to do business and all you know how to do is stand on the corner and argue. Loitering is what that's called. And I don't care what you say. You can't go and do it in a church somewhere, being you want to get all religious with it? Go find a church and do that stuff in. That's what I would do. It's called loitering, black folks. They should change the word loitering to blackness and just say, on all the signs in this neighborhood and elsewhere where black folks love to loiter and hold up traffic. They should just say, no blackness. And everybody would know what you're talking about. The white folks looking at each other like, do I loiter? I didn't know I loiter. No, it's talking about them black folks, man. Oh, yeah, it's always black folks. Why is that? Dude, I can never understand why it's always why these black folks love to loiter with the pants sagging off their behind. I never understood that. Let me tell you something, Mr. Polight and my Jewish brother. I come from a culture that was given to me by Jesus Christ. He has put black people as well as many, many white people in my path that love me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about New York. I'm sorry, maybe from what you know what, I got a friend right here in Pennsylvania who left New York and moved here to Pennsylvania. He went through so much crap in New York. He moved here to Pennsylvania. Now he's the kind of guy that will get up in front of the white man and talk about, the Penguins, talk about hockey and football and baseball, like that, talk about the news, talk about politics, blah, 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 blah. They don't come to me and hate on me because I say something like, I love white people. Or because I have a lot of white friends, or because or I say something about what black women should need to do or stop doing, or I talk about thug life or gangs or whatever. He'll hate on me for that. And talk to me about how much he hates white people. But yet he'll get up in front of my white boss and say, oh man, how'd you like that hockey game? I saw it in the paper, man. I saw it in the news, man. What a hypocrite. What a hypocrite. But my culture, not these guys coming in from New York, not these guys loitering in Harlem on every street corner or on certain street corners that the white man let them loiter on, because all they got to do is make a phone call, have a meeting, and boom, you're off the streets, Mr. Polight, Mr. Sinetta. You're off the streets. Mr. Hebrew Israelite, you're off the streets. That's what I think they should do. Because white folks ain't allowed to do that. They're not allowed to stand on street corners and talk about black folks while black folks is walking by. How black folks are screwing up their culture with their swag and their rap music and their gangs and their killing and the Colin Flaherty channel. They're not allowed to do that. Now, if I want to be angry at white folks about something, that's where I'm angry at them for letting black folks get away with murder every day. And then tomorrow, another brother shot dead in the street because he was playing with a toy gun at Walmart. That's the kind of stuff that makes me angry at white folks. Stop babying these black people. They don't have smaller IQs. They can help themselves. Quit telling you they can't help themselves. They can go to work just like your white behind can go to work. Put them to work. Get them off the street and put them to work. Make them work for that welfare, god darn it. I come from a culture of blacks, whites, Asians, Arabs, Indians, Native Americans, you name it, that loved the Lord. Okay? We don't know each other by the color of our skin. We know each other by God is good. He's coming back. Are you ready? That's how we know each other. Because we all getting on the same plane to get out of here. Okay? Mr. Polight, you don't listen very well. You really don't, brother. You would not even let this Jewish guy open up his mouth. As soon as he opened his mouth, you put your foot in it. You didn't even hear what he had to say before you put your foot in it. He said one word, oh, and you just... Mr. Polight, you're not very polite. Neither are you very bright. The funny thing that Mr. Polight said that really had me laughing so hard. Oh, I laughed so hard I went from laughing to choking. Oh, it was so funny. The Jewish guy, this is where the Jewish guy beat Polight. Now, I looked at the comment section in this video. And there were people saying, oh man, Polight had his, ASS, Polight whooped his butt. This brother should have knew what he was talking about before he started messing with the almighty Polight and blah, 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 blah. Hold up. The Jewish man wasn't allowed to say anything. What are you talking about? See, this is why I don't argue with people. The Jewish man was casting his pearls before swine. That's like you trying to talk to an animal. You trying to talk to your dog. You trying to talk to your dog, and all he's concerned about is the meat on your plate. You got a plate of meat. That meat is confusing him because you got that meat and it's still warm, and the scents are coming. And he's thinking you're gonna give him some table food. So he's just wagging his tail, and you trying to talk to your dog. Tell him how lovely he is and how wonderful a dog he is, and how he needs to learn how to go to the bathroom outside. And he wagging his tail, and he's sniffing the table. He want that meat. And then he turns around when he see you ain't going to give him the meat, turns around and poops right in the middle of the carpet. That's what Polight was doing with this Jewish brother. And this Jewish brother was talking to Polight. It was like talking to a dog. It's like talking to a pig, man. It's like you trying to talk to a herd of pigs and they just run right by you. Did they hear anything I just said? No, they're way over there eating pig food. You way over here. That's the way Polight was. Polight was sitting there, and then Polight would keep changing the conversation to something else. Every time the preacher said something, you could tell when he was nailing Polight, because he would ask Polight a question, and Polight would say, "Let me ask you a question." A question with a question. Typical atheist nonsense. A question with a question. A question for a question. That's not an answer. That's a question for a question. That's called me casting my pearls before swine when I have to deal with people like that. Mr. Polight, you're not very polite. Neither are you very bright. This is the funny thing he said, though, that really, 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 really had me laughing so far. He said, when the preacher said, "Mr. Polight, may I ask you, what faith are you of?" Religion, faith, however you want to put it, sir. What faith are you of? He says, he looked in the camera, he says, he had to think about it for a minute because he knew he was tripping. He was like, "I have created my own religion, which I am the founder of." Oh my God. That was it for me. Nothing else he said made any sense after that. Oh my goodness. And I saw the preacher, man, he was trying to hold his laugh back like, oh my God, what did he just say? Did he just say that? Oh, you want to condemn me for having a religion, and you want to condemn all religious people, but I created my own religion, which I am the founder of. I don't know, maybe he was trying to be Kevin Hart when he said that. Maybe he was trying to be a comedian. You can't create a religion and be an atheist at the same time. Now, to me, Polight is a so-called black atheist. But yet his idols are people like Malcolm X, who had the FBI all up his butt, and all these other religions hating on him and all like that. I do believe that Mr. Malcolm X was the most mellow out of all the Muslim people, because he's the only one that, he was against all the different Muslim people. But Mr. Polight, when he closed out the video, he quoted something from what his Muslim buddies say. And let me tell you something. Again, Islam is not a black religion either. Islam is an Arab religion. It's not an Abrahamic religion. Neither is Christianity. Islam is an Islam is an Arab religion. Christianity is a Christian faith. Okay? The word Christian, people call all kinds of things Christian, but the word Christian means to be like Christ. Okay? Judaism is the only Abrahamic religion. There is no other but Judaism. Why? Because Judaism stops at Abraham. They don't believe in Jesus Christ. Okay? This is why Jesus came to slap him around a little bit. And that's why he got nailed to a cross. Because Judaic people, okay, the so-called, in-depth Jews, they don't believe in Jesus Christ. They believe in God, but they don't believe in Jesus. Okay? Now, the Hebrews. The Hebrews and the Jews are basically the same people, Polight. Oh my God. Are you really, really, really going to make that an argument? The Hebrews and the Jews are basically the same people. The Hebrew Israelite cult, I call them a cult, are a little bit right on that. The Hebrews and the Jews were the same people. Now, the Hebrews were very, very, very well recognized until Abraham. And then that name Hebrew was not used that much anymore throughout the culture. Now, if you go to Google and you said no one has ever spoken Hebrew language, there is no such thing as Hebrews, there's no such thing as the Hebrew language. Who's ever spoke it? Polight, you're such a knucklehead. There's people speaking Hebrew right now as I speak. It's a language that's not recognized. So therefore, a lot of people that speak Hebrew know other languages besides Hebrew. But they can speak Hebrew to their family. Now, the Yiddish speaking people, Jews, I Googled it, they speak German and Russian as well as Yiddish. Okay? They don't speak Hebrew anymore. But Hebrew was the original Jewish language. Now, why they stopped speaking it, maybe Polight can answer that one for me. But as far as whether Hebrews ever existed, as far as whether anybody ever spoke the Hebrew language, Polight, I'm going to say it again. You're not very polite, neither are you very bright. Common sense told me when I was a child and I read through half the New Testament. When I read through half the Old Testament. That obviously Hebrews and Jews were very similar. They were almost the same people. They might have had, the Hebrews were more closer to Africa and the Jews were more closer to the east at that time. But they're the same people. What do you mean there's no Hebrews? Where you show me? Okay, so this is like all the other typical atheists. What Polight is going through is, if I can't document it through Google, if I can't document it through some book or something, if a book has not been written on it yet, it doesn't exist. That's not true. And he said that about the Bible too. That's not true. That is not true at all. Um, and where do these guys get these names? I mean, where is Polight your real name? Or is that a wannabe name because you trying to act like you polite when you ain't? And Saka. Saka, that sounds like a African tribal name. Let me ask you something, Saka. Uh, Inside Mr. Cyanetter, have y'all ever been in an African tribe before? Did you come here? Let me get this straight. You was in an African tribe way out in the jungle killing apes and tigers. And then all of a sudden you came to New York and started preaching and trying to help the black folks out. Is that what's going on here? Your mama really called you Cyanetter? Only black folks got this problem. White folks don't have a problem. You know, you can pick on white folks, okay, but they don't have these problems. They don't spend their life trying to be something that they're not. I'm sorry, this is what I like about white culture. That's what I like about white culture right there. They don't try to be something they're not. Only black folks. Neither do the Asians and their Arab brothers. They're not as bad as black folks either until they start blowing stuff up and start slapping their wives around and raping children. Okay? Then they just like black folks. But, you know, don't try to preach to me when you're not even happy with who you are. You live a life where you're constantly upset over, were you here? I'm 51 years old. I wasn't here. I believe I'm younger than Polight. I wasn't here when my family went through racism. Neither was my mother. And my grandmother, she was here at a certain part of the Depression. But my grandmother wasn't as full of as much hate as a lot of these younger generation people coming up, yelling and screaming and kicking stuff and hating on everybody. Why? Because their ancestors went through slavery. Let me ask you a little something, Mr. Polight. Can you name any of your ancestors that went through slavery? I mean, do you have their birth records? Do you have the videotapes of them being whooped and raped? And you want white men to rape black women so bad, that's all you talk about. I believe you create videos, Mr. Polight, of white men raping black women because it turns you on. Worry about what's in front of you, brother, and quit going back in the past, because if you're a nobody, you're still a nobody no matter how far back in the past you go. Worry about what's in front of you. Worry about what's in front of you. What's in front of you ain't slavery. What's in front of you ain't white folks lynching black folks. It's you in Harlem and don't know how to get out. Or you left Harlem claiming you trying to help the black folks, but oh, you didn't mind taking that white money, did you? And because you don't have the skills to do anything else but run your mouth and run your hate, then you want to come back to the hood claiming you trying to help your black brothers, but you know they ain't gonna listen to that nonsense up in Beverly Hills. My God, they don't even wear tattoos up there. I don't think. Unless they making lots of money for it. Brothers from the hood making all this money and still being from the hood. And then, on top of that nonsense, you think you're qualified to preach? No, just like you was dumb enough to make all this money and leave the hood to come back to the hood and run your hate and teach your own children how to hate. You're not qualified to preach to anybody. Get your heart right, Mr. Polight. Like that's what the man was telling you at the end of the video. Mr. Polight, I'd like to challenge your heart, man. You got a bad heart. You got a heart full of hate. And I'm watching your little kids in the background listening to this, and they're looking at you like, wow, Dad, what are you going to do? Punch the computer screen or something? There's a lot of hate generating out of this young man. But that's my rant about Mr. Polight. Let me tell you something. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. Ain't got nothing to do with black folks. Ain't got nothing to do with white folks. Let me tell you something else. He went off on this poor Jewish guy about where the Bible originated from and all this kind of stuff. Let me say it again that you wouldn't let the Jewish boy say. The Bible is not a white man's book. Neither was it completed by white folks. That's the facts. Look it up. Now, he looked everything up at that in the Hebrews. Okay? Somebody that held on to the Hebrew race need to go visit Mr. Polight so they can debunk his nonsense. But anyway, there is plenty of evidence to show where the Bible came from. Now, I did a whole study on it. Had all these books in front of me and everything else. I'm not going to bring all them. I'm not going to go to church and bring all that stuff back here to my house. It's not necessary. But I do know that Christianity is not a white man's thing. But I will say this. Thank God for the white man. You know why? Because it was the white man that when the brown-skinned people threw down their faith and trampled on it because they chose paganism over Christ. Okay? It was the white cultures that picked it back up. Is that racism? Because they took what you threw away and picked it back up? And then let me tell you something. You're right, Polight. The Christians weren't over there worshiping God and got brought over here as slaves. Okay? No, they was wearing grass skirts and dancing around the fire. Because that's all they knew how to do over there in that nation at that time. Okay? And the white man looked over there at them and said, look at these monkeys. Look how evil they are. Is that a knife sticking out of his forehead? You know what? We need to go over there and take these as people as slaves because we need their land, we need their resources, we need slaves over here. African religions are pagan. And if you read your Bible, that goes all the way back to the children of Egypt, which were at that time Hebrews, being controlled by Pharaoh. And you got these black knuckleheads today calling themselves Pharaoh and Sinetta and worshiping the pyramids, and they think they qualified to preach. You qualified to stick your head in the toilet. That's what you're qualified to do. Because you don't know what you're talking about. That stuff is all pagan, man. You come from a pagan culture. It's satanic. Black folks are blessed to be in America today. I'm sorry for what your ancestors had to go through, or my ancestors as well. Our ancestors, to be exact. But thank God for the white man. You need to say, white man, thank you. Instead of a white man, you owe us an apology. Did the white man ever apologize for racism? Right. That's why you got a right to stand on the street corners and talk about them like they're not right there looking at you. Say all kinds of nasty blasphemies against them. Right. Try to go back in the 1970s and do that nonsense. Anyway, black folks, let me tell you something. Quit trying to find yourselves. You know, rap music is nice music, but it ain't your music. It's the devil's music. Unless it's Christian, of course. I know some Christian rappers. But even my Christian rapper friends are not bound to rap and rap culture. They don't need to swag their pants because they like rap music. They don't need to get escorted out of the library by security because they love rap music so much. There's a fine line between this beautiful chocolate skin of ours and some bullcrap nonsense that ain't in our blood, but you got all these white people fooled, thinking that murder and crime and rape and child molestation is all in our blood. Because they forgot what their ancestors did to the slaves because they don't do it. Now I'm praying to God to help me to understand that. How they don't have the balls to do what their ancestors did. But we're worse than our ancestors. Oh